By now, I'm sure you've all heard the phrase, it's better to drive a slow car fast as opposed to a fast car slow. But on this episode of Eat, Sleep, Drive, we're gonna take that to a whole nother level because I'm gonna explain to you why you not only need the slow car, you need the worst slow car. Welcome everyone to another episode of Eat, Sleep, Drive. And by now you guys have probably seen the video where I went and bought this car for under $7,000 because it's got a bunch of cosmetic issues, as I'm sure you can plainly see. And then I promptly drove it into a ditch. And if you haven't seen that, you should join the 500,000 other people who have watched me drive this into a ditch and then subsequently laugh at me because I'm a moron. But the point of this video is that this is our example of not only the slow car, but the worst car. As you can see, I've owned this car and not treated it super well. It sits under this tree here. It doesn't get a garage spot like my M3, but that's sort of the point, and we're gonna get to all that in a minute here. So what is the whole slow car fast as opposed to fast car slow type scenario? Well, it's the whole premise that you're gonna have more fun driving a car like with your foot down all the time as opposed to kind of like having to let up because the car is too fast and you'll be like instantly breaking the speed limit. Now, that's a well and established thing that you either subscribe to or don't subscribe to. But I'm here to tell you that we're gonna take it to a whole nother level because not only do you need a slow car, you need a slow car in horrible condition. I've driven this car for almost 6 months now, and despite it being in crappy shape, exterior-wise, mechanically you want it to be good, but exterior-wise with some issues, it's got some hail damage, the front bumper's messed up, the back bumper's messed up. Despite all that, I still enjoy it more than my M3. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna take the better car, objectively the better car, and it is the better car, the E92 M3, out for a spin. But we're gonna talk about its shortcomings. We're gonna talk about the parts that people don't really talk about when it comes to having and owning a nice car. It's great, but there are some downsides. And then we're gonna take the FRS for a spin, and I'm gonna show you guys just like what innocent fun it is and how I clearly don't have to care about it in order to have fun with it. And then finally, I'm going to leave you with my recommendations for what sort of horrible, worst slow car you want to buy. Does that make sense? No, not at all. Let's go for a spin in the M3. Now, we're in the E92. And don't get me wrong, I still love and adore this car. It is an iconic car for a reason. You know, the sound, the only V8 M3, the sound is phenomenal. It's super compliant, greatly balanced. Like, it is the better car than the FRS, make no mistake about it. But the problem you run into with nice cars or iconic cars like this is that I feel a moral obligation to keep this car in as nice shape as possible. And even further, more than the moral obligation, just because it's iconic, I bought it in good condition, I feel obligated to keep it in good condition. Monetarily, I am incentivized to keep it in good condition because if I do, you know, there's a good chance that these will ultimately be collectible cars. You know, once again, it's the only V8 M3. It's wonderful to drive. It's wonderful to look at. So if I keep it in good shape, it should hold its value or go up in value. So that's amazing because the car is amazing, but it's a double-edged sword because every single time I drive it, I'm worried about, is it gonna rain? You know, like I would never consider driving this car in the snow whatsoever. Like I don't want it to see salt. You know, every time I drive it, did it get dirty? Like I wash it basically every other time I drive the car because I want to keep it clean and good condition. Like this paint is in such good shape. So it's a bit of a chore, you know, like I'm not going to say that this is like a super sought after collectible car that, you know, needs to be museum quality, but you do get some of that feeling when you own a car like this and you're not like ultra rich and it doesn't matter if it depreciates, right? So it is a bit of a chore. I wash it basically every other time I drive it. I'm worried about if it's gonna rain. If there's more than a 10% chance of rain, I'm not even gonna drive it. So you have to worry about that kind of things with cars. And that's the problem with nice cars that people don't really talk about, is the fact that you kind of have to keep it in good shape. Otherwise, it's gonna lose value, or it's gonna, it's gonna eat you alive that it's not clean. And that does happen to me. So the other thing that you have to keep in mind is this, that faster cars often, almost always, require more money for consumables. The tires on this car, a Michelin Pilot Super Sports, they are like $300 a corner. I would dare not go like hooning this thing around like I do in my FRS. I mean, the tires on my FRS are so cheap and crappy. So yeah, I don't care, like burnouts, whatever, drifted around a corner, whatever. The brakes on my FRS are literally a third to a quarter of the cost of the brakes on this car. So the cost of ownership is also something that will keep you from putting on heavy miles on a car like this. As opposed to with the FRS, I don't even think twice about driving that car. I can go enjoy it, hammer the brakes, hammer the tires, and just enjoy the car for what it is. Once again, if you're the type of person that just doesn't care about a car and is willing to just kind of like ruin it and have it depreciate, then this really doesn't matter. But I know there's a lot of you that are like me, that are obviously on a budget and you want to own a nice car, but it's going to cost you some money to do it. So why not buy the cheaper, slower, worst car? Because you don't worry about things like, is it going to get rained on? Is it going to get messed up? Am I going to have to spend $600 replacing the rear tires after a burnout? So those are things that people don't think about before they buy a nice car. So keep those in mind. Let's pop in the FRS and I'll show you how fun that car is. All right, so FRS time. Peeling out. Already doing stuff I would never do in the M3. Now this car, this new slow car fast mentality I've already mentioned is nothing new, but you take it to a whole nother level when you have a car that is not in great shape that you bought it in, so you don't really care if it gets more messed up. So when I drive this car, I just throw caution to the wind and I just like do things that I wouldn't do in my nicer cars. It's great for learning. That's what slow cars fast are about. And it's even furthermore less consequences. Like if I slide off this road, I might mess up my bumper or something. Like my bumper's already messed up right now. I'm obviously not going 10/10 and making things unsafe for other people on the road. But when people aren't around, I may oversteer it a little bit, kick the back end out a little bit, and I don't worry about consumables. Like when they first came out with this car and they're like, yeah, it's on trash tires, like purposely, meaning like we purposely put it on bad tires so the rear end moves around a lot and you have less grip. I thought that was like a load of horseshit. I was like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Why would you not put grippy tires on the car? But I totally get it now. I totally get why they do that on the FRS. Like in a low power car, I can have a bunch of fun just kind of hucking this thing around, getting some slip out of the car at lower speeds. That's the big thing. I don't have to be going 100 miles an hour to get a thrill from this thing like I do in my M3. I can be going low speeds. So that's the first thing. Next, and I've sort of kind of alluded to it already, is that I park this car outside and I don't even think twice about it. I don't care. Like the exterior is already kind of in bad shape. So what is it going to get worse? Just like getting shit on by a bunch of birds or some leaves falling on it? Like it doesn't bother me, but I would never consider just keeping my M3 outside, like especially under a tree or whatever. Like the paint gets etched so quick. Paint gets etched so quick when when a bird poops on it and you don't clean it right away, like your paint kind of gets messed up and you have to like correct it. But so I worry about that kind of thing in my M3. I don't worry about that here. I've already talked about consumables. They're cheap. I changed it all 4 brakes, pads and rotors for like $200, and for like good stuff too, like power stop track pads and rotors, and it was like $200. So it's cheap. You don't really have to care about it. I think I've washed this car once after I put it in a ditch just to get the mud off of it. And you know, I'm gonna drive it in the winter and not have any concern for it. So it's freedom, man. It is automotive freedom when it's a car that you can, you know, just have fun with, not worry about depreciating, and just enjoy for the sake of driving without any sort of consequences. So that's really what we're trying to get to with this whole worst slow car thing. Buy the car that you're gonna have the most fun with, not the car that has the magazine fast numbers. So let's sum it all back up, go back to the house, and I'll give you guys my recommendations. Well, that leads us to our last thing, which is the worst slow car to buy, if that's really a thing. I can't believe I'm saying that. I love the GT86 BRZ FRS. I love these cars, as you can tell by this video, and I've really enjoyed the 6 months of ownership. It's not a bad car to choose from because there's a lot to choose from. And because of the type of owners who typically buy these, you can find them pretty beat up like the one I did. Now, the thing you want to look out for is I would stay away from rebuilt titles or salvage cars or cars that have been in major accidents. Like, of course, this thing has had some bumps and bruises, but all the body panels are original. And yes, like there's dents all over the place. There's dings in the front bumper, rear bumper, and stuff like that. But overall, like the car is straight. You know, you can align it. It's all good. You know, it's not gonna rust out because of some like terrible repair that's been done or some horrible crash. It's not gonna align. So unless you know the story and unless you know who like rebuilt the car, I would really stay away from that kind of stuff, like salvage cars and things like that. Just look for cars that have like minor issues like this one. Like this car has hail damage. You know, a lot of people don't want a car with hail damage, but you can have fun with the car the same way you would a car without hail damage. So look for that kind of stuff. And mechanically, obviously, you want to make sure it's pretty sound. Fortunately, with these kind of cars, they're pretty cheap to repair, and there's not too much that goes wrong with them. There's a valve spring recall on these, but I think that's honestly pretty overhyped, and you could get it fixed by Subaru or Toyota, but there's a high propensity for the tech, whoever does the job, to do a terrible job. So keep that in mind. Outside of the BRZ FRS, of course, the obvious answers, or the always answer is Miata. You could look at any Miata. Miata is a great platform. Same as this, cheap to run, reliable, all those things. Also look at Fiesta STs. I'm a big fan of Fiesta STs. I had one on my channel. You can check out all the videos on that. That's another slow car, fun to drive, and they're cheap. And what else do we have? Any older BMW, something like, like a 330i in the E46 generation, or even if you want to look at E36s, are great in this category. They're going to be a little more expensive to maintain because they're older and it's a BMW, but so if you want to look for something that's a little newer, maybe a little beat up, but still new enough that it's going to be reliable, that's my suggestion for you guys. As you can see, I think the FRS is the right choice in the slow car, fast mentality. And I'm going to keep driving this thing, man. Like, I really, really enjoy driving it and just not having to care about it. Whatever happens, happens. And I just get to have fun with it. So let me know what you guys think. Are you proponents, are you advocates for the slow car, fast mentality? And or do you think I'm an idiot, which is usually the case? So let me know in the comments below. I appreciate you guys watching. This has been another episode of Eat Sleep Drive. I drop an episode every single Friday, so if you enjoyed the content, make sure you subscribe. And if you want to check me out in between episodes, at Eat Sleep Drive TV on Instagram. See you on the next one, guys. Peace. Excuse me, sir. Do you have any Grey Poupon? Hi there.